So Convergence is a series dedicated to exploring the practical or the pivotal intersections of technology, business and leadership. And today we're diving deep into a topic that is not just relevant but absolutely critical for every leader in today's rapidly evolving landscape. Right, so this is your chance, Faisal, to make big, bold statements.
What can I say that will be shocking?
Faisal, what comes to mind when you hear AI global divide?
It really boils down to wealth distribution.
Wealth distribution.
Yeah.
That's it.
Because
One sentence.
I think a handful of people are going to be really wealthy, and vast majority of people are be dependent on other people's wealth. And that will create a divide. In the last Fast Company article, we call it digital colonialism, because it has happened before in the sense that in the past, but in the future, it will be a technological divide. I mean, we already see that. You know, the people who has more technology has more wealth, more control, more power. And we talked about those 8-10 vendors. You can take it broader context, and you can say, okay, the nations which are going to be more advanced with this kind of technology are going to have more wealth, more power. And nations who are not going to have those technology are going to be less fortunate.
So we'll go into that 1 second. I want to hear as well, in very short, just your input. If you could just classify the AI global divide in one word, what would that word be?
It's very difficult to answer. But I mean, here's a good example, right? You know, there's all sorts of data where the model builders, let's take OpenAI as an example, are paying $2 an hour to build models, and the workers are in Africa. And these are knowledge workers, right? So, you know, we wear clothes, cheap labor makes these clothes, and wealthy nations buy these clothes, and these are done by children and whatnot. Engineers and data scientists in Africa or in India or other places getting paid $2 or $4 an hour, whereby the model owners are becoming trillion-dollar companies. There's a perfect example.
Okay, so if we want to go down this avenue in the sense, one thing that I want to highlight as well, and I used the word AI global divide, but then we've got the association and the connotation, as we've discussed a little bit on the thread edge, of there is a global divide in a multitude of senses. If we stick with the AI global divide that we've highlighted, you've given the example of knowledge workers that are being paid less than they obviously should be being paid, but you also have, this is not different in any other sort of industry. And there's one famous example where Mr. Beast has a conversation around the fact that he actually attempted to change unethical situations in cocoa production by making sure that there was ethical working practices brought into the production of his chocolate bars. So he had the decency, and I think we could put him on par with like any other global tech leader. He had the decency and also the values to change that because he had the choice to change it or not. So why can it not be the same in the tech industry? Why does there have to be a global divide in the tech industry when there's individuals who are comparative on many levels that are changing the world from an ethical practice and fair trade perspective?
Look, you can take it a little broader than just the tech industry, in the sense that we're hypersensitive about hyperautomation. You're going to have joblessness, right? I mean, there's no way, no matter how optimistic view you have, there's no way you're going to have the similar type of jobs, an equal number of jobs within next 3, 5, 10 years. That's inevitable, right? So that will also create that digital divide, or whatever you want to call it, because it's wealth divide, right? Some people are going to be more fortunate, and some people are going to be less fortunate. And that will create a huge, we just talked about regenerative leadership, regenerative organization, regenerative planet. When you have a lot of people unhappy, you can't have that, you know, and lack of wealth and lack of opportunity is going to create a lot of problems. And so it's not just it's a nice to have conversation. you're going to create a next level of pandemic. A pandemic is an economic pandemic situation where a whole lot of people are just stuck. They can't do anything, right? So that cannot be, that's not sustainable.
Why can they not do anything? So if we just highlight it black and white, because I think that a lot of people as well have this idea of, I don't think that everyone understands the extent, in my opinion, of the division that's caused by access to technology. So if we take it on a simple level, for example, if we're talking about the fact that the global south is quite well known for the fact that they don't have the same access to even internet or mobile phones.
Sure.
So there's been a lack of a fair technological distribution simply because they don't have access to it. But now if we intensify that with the introduction of AI, the advancement of AGI, etc., automation, hyperautomation, what does that mean if we take that element of comparativeness to like internet, telephone? Like, why will it be different? Like, why will people become more wealthier than they've actually had the opportunity to become now? Because you've also got a lot of people saying that this is the year of the entrepreneur. Forget like CEOs working for people. 2026, everyone's going to be entrepreneurs. So because tech is going to boost that, tech is going to make people have the access to opportunities that they can create more wealth with.
Yeah, well, to create wealth, you need market, which means that people have to have buying power. So if you have lesser number of buyer people that has buying power, right there it shrinks, right? So there's that element of it. But here's the difference between having, what we saw during the internet days. And you can say that, look, a lot of wealth has been created because of the technology, which is always true, right? The question is, where does the wealth go, right? And never before we have attempted to create where it's a human replacement, right? You don't need your cook anymore because you have a humanoid robot. You don't need your taxi driver because you got an automated car. You don't need anybody to clean your house because they have, I've got my personal butler that goes and cleans my things. You don't need a tutor because I've got a robot that teaches my children, right? So those are all replacement, right? So what happens with those replaced workforce? That is the fundamental question that we have to answer. And it's not just global south. I think you're going to see everywhere, right? So I don't think we have thought through the complete implication. And I think it's a very dangerous and almost naive thought process if we think, well, we're all going to find opportunity. Where? I mean, you can't just create the acceleration of replacement is not equals to acceleration of opportunities.
Sure, but then is this not a governmental issue?
Why? It's a societal issue, right? Government alone cannot solve this, right? Because, it's a free economy for the most part, right? So we believe in capitalism, right? But the capitalism without any conscience is going to create a different kind of problem, right? And we already see that. That's why the whole notion of conscious capitalism, net zero, sustainability, regeneration, these concepts, circular economy, right? All these concepts being talked about. In my humble opinion, however, we're not talking about this enough in the context of AI because we have never had a situation where we're creating our own replacements.
So you're convinced then in the sense that it's this component of replacement, the issue around replacement in sort of equationable balance of regeneration that we need to be looking at how we are giving back, transforming to make sure that that's balanced out. Because it's not something we've ever experienced and it's a different equation per se.
Absolutely. I think we need to be much more deliberate. Look, we have a culture of going very fast, right? I mean, globally, we have developed this culture, go very fast, okay? Yes, we want to do fast, but we also want to be deliberate. Innovation without responsibility means absolutely nothing.
So it's like the cheetah and the horse.
It's hungry.
But it's not just about legislation, it's collectively what we do and what we accept, right? I mean, it's a collective behavior. We're normalizing a lot of things that should not be normalized, right? And we practice, we think about, we talk. So it sounds very, we're hypersensitive about this. Vast majority of the people have no clue what's going on. I mean, that's just fact. You're getting manipulated. We don't even know what's real and what's not real anymore, right? So I think more and more we're getting replaced, one form or other, by our personal choice or by organization or by government, and we're not even realizing it, right? So before we know it, all of a sudden, look, we have less job growth. In the US, there has been less job growth in the last 4 quarters than it has been ever before. So what does that mean? That means we have more layoffs. Where the layoffs are? Layoffs are not like just the blue-collar jobs, and it's everywhere, right? So what happens to those people?
Yeah, but then, so yesterday I was at this event, and the first person I met at the event, I'm quite open to going and talking to people, so the first person that I met at this event was this young gentleman, I'd say probably a guess about 21. He had come from Abu Dhabi, he was in Zurich, he was studying computer science. It was an AI event, lo and behold, it's an AI event. And he was also confused at the fact that he had chosen computer science, but then he was asking me for advice on, but what should I do? Because I don't know what to do with computer science. And I'm just convinced about the fact that I'm conscious that tech is an ever more present component of society. I feel I should be studying computer science, but now I'm not sure what I should do in my master's. And my professor's telling me that I should focus on, a niche of computer science, like neural networks or something like that.
Cognitive behavior, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. But then for individuals like him that have already gone into this component of associating themselves with AI, it's still a fortunate track. What about everyone else that doesn't have any bloody clue about what they should do in the future? I mean, how should society then step up and help navigate that? Because that, again, is about this regenerative leadership, just at a different level. It's not an organization, but now it's like a societal level regeneration element.
But we have to pace ourselves. That's really what it boils down to, right? If we pace ourselves with this advancement of technology, then we will slowly adapt, right? If we push ourselves too fast, we're going to make whole series of mistakes. I mean, financially, economically, societally, governmentally, et cetera, et cetera. And this technology and this revolution particularly requires a much more deliberate and thoughtful approach than anything else human history has ever seen. For a fundamental reason is the fact that we have never seen or built anything that is more intelligent than us. And we won't even get into the fact that, well, are we going to be controlled by AI and we're going to become a less dominant species and this new species dominates us, right? Because that is also a possibility. And a number of philosophers, a number of thinkers, a number of computer scientists has been throwing red flags that wake up, people, if you're not very deliberate about it. Before we know it, humanity is not going to be what it is today.
So in a sense, this does come back to the circular equation of the intensification of poverty. And let me explain it. It's like, also, it's about the fact that if we are building machines that are more intelligent than us, and you have a sort of layer of society that has open access. Also, if we look at from a global perspective, like countries that have access to more education than others, and then you have the opportunity to have this stance of fundamental levels of intelligence, and there's a whole conversation around how we're defining intelligence, but those that are not, and those that are still those 3 layers behind of even having the opportunity for education and also to develop this intellect, then surely that gap is, just as we've highlighted at the start, going to intensify, it's going to widen. So essentially the question in the statement could be, AI is more likely to widen inequality than reduce it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's already happening. I mean, look at social discourse as an example, right? I mean, we have never been such a divided society as it is right now, right? So even on that level, like social level, algorithmically, we're like segregated in our own little bubble, and then we hate each other. We can't even have normal conversation. Can you imagine when there'll be like
that's so true.
And so can you imagine what will happen? Now you have this massive wealth gap, and that's why also there's a rise of conversation about universal base income, et cetera, and maybe we'll get to a Star Trek kind of a society where we won't have to worry about any kind of income, and all we do is explore the space. Yeah, that's possible. But from here to there, it's so far away. I'm worried about for the next 5 years or 10 years or 20 years versus 50 years or 100 years from now. But my point is that you have to look at the immediate impact, and I think we need to be deliberate. I keep coming back to this. Deliberation doesn't mean that you don't move fast. Deliberation means that you think before you act so that you can make the right decision, right? It's like going in you see this in the firefighters, among the firefighters, right? There's a fire, and the firefighters starts trying to, put out the fire, but they're also collecting information where the wind is blowing and what the water force is, and you adjust. We're not doing that. We're just headed straight towards the fire. And that to me is concerning.
Yeah, but it's almost the firefighter analogy. It's an interesting analogy because you have people that work as a team.
Yes.
And then you've got you've also got that individual element, and a lot of, if we take it back to tech and AI, a lot of initiatives are coming top down.
Right.
So it's the CEO that is putting pressure on the organization to make sure that they look like an AI native, an AI frontier organization. There's the pressure maybe from the board that they've got to make sure that they can prove that there is an investment in technology, in ROI, in changing, transforming the organization in accordance with external pressures. So that in itself is interesting. It's like the team versus the individual per se. And also, is it really possible not to go full speed ahead?
I think it's absolutely possible because look, organization and leadership is about systems, right? And you have to almost look at it from an ecosystem point of view, that firefighting, analogy, the firefighters working together, but it's also in an ecosystem of that fire situation, meaning the people that surround them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can apply the same kind of analogy. The role of a leader or a CEO, whatever you want to call them, today is not just about what's my top line growth and what's my bottom line impact. It's not beyond that, right? So what happens as a result of my choice, what happens to my customer? What happens to my supplier? What happens to my employees? What happens to the local environment, right? If we don't start thinking that way, we're not going to be dead by, whether the temperature is going few degree up or few degree down. You can sort of manage that in the next 10 years because you can shed a layer or add a layer. That's actually, there's a recent thinking about the hyper focus on environment, never took off because you didn't see the personal impact on it, right?
True.
But this element of it, you will see personal impact, right? And it's much more immediate. You can't have purposeless, jobless people running around all over the planet and hope that it'll be okay. It's just not possible. The global financial system is based on economics. And economics doesn't work without people's buying power and prosperity. And I'm not even an economist, I'm just talking from an entrepreneurial and a management thinking and system thinking point of view.
So, all of what you said is extremely true. But now I still go back to the question of how can we set younger generations up for success in this sort of an environment?
I don't know. It's a very tough question. I worry about that all the time. I have a son who's 23 years old. So he's going to sooner or later start his work life, or hopefully he will start work life. I look at his friends and some of them are doing okay. Some of them are not doing okay, and they're all confused. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's a collective responsibility to create opportunity for them, by them. All of us has to be very conscious about ecosystem impact, which we're not doing. What do you think about vision?
No, it's something like I ask these questions as well. I think there's this innate responsibility and sort of unsureness in myself as a mother. Like, you're a father and I'm a mother. Mm-hmm. And I also think it's one of the biggest questions that I ask myself on a constant basis is, how can I prepare my daughter for the future world? And I'm sure that every mother and father asks that question. I don't think I don't think I differ from other mothers and fathers, but I think that, as we've discussed and we're both very aware of, the magnitude and the impact that this technology will have on the future workforce is not only from a physiological perspective very evident the more we go into science, which might be interesting how that will evolve itself, because maybe it will, like has been highlighted. Before there was writing, people used to hallucinate, they used to dream, they used to write about it. And then it changed and there was less hallucination, there was less creativity. So maybe there will be that opportunity as well to change the world into a more creative, I want to say caring place, but who knows? I think it's the fact that there will be that divide. And it's also about trying to anticipate as well how you can educate yourself. It's about education. It's about keeping on the ball. That's the main sort of message.
Yeah, look, I mean,
educate yourself, be aware of the replacement opportunities, stay in the conversation, and keep your educational values close to your children.
Yeah, the notion of adaptability, right? I mean, you almost have to be real-time adaptive.
Yes.
Right? You cannot be reactive after the fact. So the real-time adaptivity requires gathering a lot of information and knowledge and siphoning through which knowledge is actually wisdom and which knowledge is useless, right? There's lots of other information out there that's not going to have any impact. You can also look at it, or many aspects of the technology is very hopeful.
I think it's like we're so absorbed in the space that we know that the cautionary component of technological implementation at the moment, there's a lot of things that have not been figured out, especially with the integration of LLMs, Gen AI in hyper-regulated spaces.
100%. I honestly think that we have an opportunity to make that was the motivation to write Transcend, right? I mean, we have an opportunity to transcend humanity with technology. But you have to first focus on humanity and what it means, and the collective humanity, not just handful of privileged ones, right? So if we focus on just handful of privileged one, then we're not really transcending humanity. We're just making a handful of people wealthier.
Yeah, it's inspirational that you decided to write that book as well, because you've also got the conflict in parallel of like the rise in narcissism, Yes. It's like, how can you stop the rise in narcissism as well, which is also associated with tech and digital habits, etc. But anyways, this is a huge topic. So one last question, just 2 sentences. If you had $1 billion to close the AI gap tomorrow, would you invest in infrastructure, talent, or regulation?
I invest in regulation and ethical education.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.